This is a video that I've been meaning to make for a while now. It's something I've not really got round to, but it's kind of a bit of a touchy topic, so I've been to and fro whether I should talk about it. But I've had a lot of private conversations with people about it, and it is something that I feel like I should share because there should be more information out there. So there's a lot of people who follow me will know that we had some issues with, well, we didn't have issues with conceiving, we had issues with keeping a pregnancy. I had 3 miscarriages in the space of 6 months. We lost pretty much all the babies between 4 and 6 weeks. So obviously we knew there was some sort of issue, but didn't know what it was at the time. So this might be a long video, but to cut a long story short, if you're planning to try for a baby, I highly recommend having your vaginal microbiome tested, because there could be a lot of issues in your microbiome, like infections or some sort of pathogenic bacteria that will kill a developing fetus, but you might not have any symptoms of. You might never know you've got the infection of the bacteria, but you might just have trouble conceiving, and that is a reason, like either multiple miscarriages or not being able to conceive or losing it before you actually realise that you're pregnant. I use a company called Screen Me. They're absolutely fantastic. They do a full breakdown of your microbiome. You do a vaginal swab, send it off to them. They do a full breakdown of your microbiome, and they give you a full video consultation to chat everything through to you. If you can give information about like trying to conceive and whatever, and they'll give some advice if you have certain bacteria that might be affecting that and so on. I have had a lot of contact with Screen Me, and I've done a podcast with them as well, chatting through some of the stuff that chatting about some of the stuff I've been through and so on. And I did tell them I was going to sort of talk about it more on my page, give some information about it all. So they've given me a 5% discount code for people who want to get their test. So it's Shannon5, you save 5%. I'm not on any sort of commission, anything like that. Like, I'm not trying to plug it for the sake of plugging it because it's a sponsor or anything. The website's screenme.co.uk, but it is something I would highly advise because it would have saved us a lot of heartache, and I've also spent a lot of money trying to figure out what's gone on, because there's certain things that the NHS don't test for. The NHS don't actually test for very much at all, and a lot of their tests will narrow things down to like maybe anaerobic or aerobic bacteria, but not actually the strain of bacteria that you might have. And the strain's very important to, one, getting rid of it and getting the right antibiotics for it, and two, knowing whether it is actually harmful or if it's something that you could live with if you don't have symptoms for. So I'll start from the beginning with my story. We started trying for a baby just before, well, it was just before World's Strongest Woman in 2022. So we got pregnant, first time trying, got a positive pregnancy test the couple of days before the competition. And it was a bit iffy trying so close to the competition, but I was due on my period more or less the day of comp. I thought, it'll be early, I probably won't know I'm pregnant, it'll be fine, I won't test anyway. And started losing the pregnancy partway through the competition. At the time, didn't have a clue what was going on. I was just in absolute agony, bleeding a lot, really bad bleeding, especially to say it was quite early. It would have been just over 4 weeks. It was just an awful experience, really. But I thought, we got pregnant straight away, at least we know we can get pregnant. And it's one of them things, like, people have miscarriages, like, is it 1 in 3, I think the statistics say now. So I never wanted to be the 1 in 3, but it happened, and I just thought, well, we'll get pregnant again next time. It's okay. Like, obviously, it's awful, and a lot of people go through it, but it is what it is. And then the following month, we didn't get pregnant, and then after that, I was well, throughout the next 6 months, it was stages of where I was getting like some light pregnancy tests. My period was coming late, so I was obviously getting positive pregnancy tests. I was pregnant, and then I would lose it not long afterwards. I had one where we lasted up to about 6 or 7 weeks, but at a scan found out it had stopped growing around the 4 to 5 week mark. It just hadn't, I hadn't lost it from my body yet. So yeah, it was just a really shitty, stressful time, not really knowing what was going on, what was causing it. So I had no symptoms of like any sort of infection or anything like that, other than I was getting some strange period-like pains when I wasn't due on my period. It was barely a pain. It was something, I think I'd had it for a couple of months and never never really noticed it enough to pursue checking out what it could have been. it was just like a very marginal twinge every so often. That it just wasn't right for me. So I went to the doctors about it, and they did like a normal swab test, and it came back showing that it's an infection, a bit like bacterial vaginosis, but wasn't bacterial vaginosis. It's just an anaerobic infection. That's all they could tell me. That's as far as the NHS testing went. And they gave me metronidazole to get rid of it, and that was it. I still had the pain afterwards. They were an absolute nightmare with rechecking because they said, oh, if you still got the pain, you still got the infection. So they gave me another round of antibiotics. A different round, said that one probably didn't get rid of it. And then I retested and they lost my swab test, so I never got my results. Still getting pain, so they did a internal exam on me and said because my cervix was really tender and it really hurt when they did it, that it had likely progressed to pelvic inflammatory disease. So they give me 2 more weeks of even stronger antibiotics, which I never read the side effects for or anything like that, but I kind of wish I did because I never would have taken them, because they are ridiculously strong antibiotics that you should not be taking without a full diagnosis and testing of an infection that they actually work for. So again, by this point, I hadn't had any results back to say if the infection was there or not. The only reason why they said it was pelvic inflammatory disease was because I jumped off the bed pretty much when she poked my cervix, which I later found out the previous antibiotics I had been on, that is the side effects of them. And I didn't have pelvic inflammatory disease. I just had like an inflamed cervix from the antibiotics, which I didn't need because the infection they tested for was no longer there. It had gone with the first round of antibiotics most likely. And I think we went through a few stages of this, of not getting results and having more antibiotics, until I was like, right, I just want to wait and see what my results are. So I finally got them back, everything clear, infection gone. I was still getting the pain, so I was like, there's still something wrong. I went through so many scans to see if there's any sort of like cancers and all. It was an awful time, a really stressful time, thinking like I either was never going to be able to have kids, or I was potentially had some sort of thing that could kill me, like cancer. So many tests for various things, and then I had private tests for other stuff that the NHS don't test for, and just like from vaginal reproductive sort of things to bowel issues, or absolutely everything, because they couldn't find out what was wrong with me, and they still could not find anything wrong with me. It was only looking on Facebook groups that I saw something about an infection called ureaplasma, which can have no symptoms at all, or it can have symptoms similar to what I was having with like really light period pains. It can have bleeding. It literally varies from person to person. Some people are in absolute agony with it. Some people have discharge. Some people have a smell, whereas others won't. But I think I read somewhere like nearly like 40% of people don't have any symptoms whatsoever. So this is when I started to pursue that and found out about Screen Me doing vaginal microbiome testing. So long story short, it ended up being ureaplasma, which is something that the NHS don't test for. It is common to have it in certain parts of your body naturally, which will not cause any issue. But if it gets into your vagina, then it will pretty much always kill a fetus or stop you being able to get pregnant. So my test results actually came back as 0.002%, which is an absolutely tiny amount, and in theory should not have actually affected being able to get pregnant, but it did, even such a minuscule amount, which is why I had no symptoms. So again, this meant more antibiotics, and it's not classed as an STI, but it is sexually transmittable. So then Paul had to be on antibiotics. So that was more months of nightmares, because it worked on me the first round, it didn't on him. It was present in his bladder, which can be normal, but if he's passing it to me, it's obviously causing further issues. So again, more months of just being an absolute nightmare with it. And I was convinced that once it had gone, we'd be fine, we'd get pregnant, it'd all work out, which was the case. But a different testing we had done just to check the ureaplasma, because the Screen Me is quite expensive to have it done, and the culture the sample, so it takes quite a while to get the results back. So we just did like a cheap test to test for the ureaplasma to see if it was positive or negative. It was as simple as that. You didn't get a percentage or anything, and mine came back positive. So I was like, oh no, sorry, it didn't come back on time. They lost it in the post, blah blah. So it was like, right, it must have gone. We've been on this many antibiotics. We'll try again. And then the next day it came back, mine was negative and Paul's was positive. So by that point, we was like, right, we're done. We're not trying again. We need to make sure it completely goes because we've been through far too much and it's just going to keep ending in miscarriage. Luckily, that time we tried actually worked. I found out I was pregnant 10 days later with the pregnancy that I have now. Everything went fine with it, but the there's a risk of him passing the infection back to me. Another test showed that I had 0.0001%, so it was still there. So most of the pregnancy was stressful in the terms of thinking, is it going to grow back? Is it going to go completely? What's going to happen with this pregnancy? We're going to lose her. Like, we couldn't get our hopes up because we didn't know if it was going to work out or not. I started doing some natural home remedies to help fight infection and so on. There's so much research I spent like looking into anything that could get rid of it or various things to help keep the pregnancy. Like, it literally took over my life, but I've got a very good knowledge on it all now, which worked well. But because I was on so many different antibiotics, because they fucked up to start with, meant that my natural microbiome, which fights infection, had all been killed off, so I had no good bacteria left whatsoever, which made me more susceptible to more infections, so I did end up having other infections. Luckily, they weren't things that affected the pregnancy. They weren't anything I had symptoms for. It was just, I was just testing and various bits of bacteria was popping up that shouldn't be there. It wasn't anything that was super high, but I had to treat it in case it became high and affected the pregnancy. So again, up until about 20 weeks or so, was like, are we going to lose this baby? Or are we going to be able to keep her? Is an infection going to cause preterm labour and she's not going to be able to survive it because she's not at that sort of gestation where she'd be able to? So it was a really, really tough time not knowing what was going on. And in the end, my final test was that I still had some bad bacteria there. It didn't seem to be causing a problem, and the people I'd spoke to and screened me had recommended I kind of just leave it now, no more antibiotics, because they keep causing co-infections and it could cause something really bad that could make me lose the pregnancy if a certain co-infection happens. So it was kind of just, I was saying, like garlic and various natural remedies to help get rid of infection, probiotics to bring my own microbiome back to normal. Luckily, everything's worked out in the end as far as I'm aware. There's no more infection. I'm 37 weeks now, so we're at the stage where if an infection did cause wouldn't be premature labour because she's full term, but cause premature rupture of the membranes, she'd be absolutely fine. She'd survive. But yeah, it's definitely worth having a test done beforehand. I think it costs around maybe £200 with Screen Me. It's not the cheapest thing, but it is 100% worth it because it will save you a lot of stress and a lot of heartache. But ureaplasma is something that, if you look online, it will say it's not common. It's an STI and it's not common. And this is completely not true because it's sexually transmittable, so it kind of is an STI, but virgins have it, and people have it who are in a relationship whose partner didn't catch it, and they haven't got it off anyone else. I've read so much information about it all, and so many couples struggling to conceive, and then find out they've got it, taking antibiotics, and conceive straight away. I read a story of a woman who was struggling for 10 years, and she had it, but her partner didn't. So obviously it wasn't transmitted to him, but she must have had it pretty much her whole life because she said in it he was the only person that she'd been with. But yeah, it is something that it is worth testing for because there's so many stories about it. The NHS do not test for it, and any doctor I've spoke to doesn't have a fucking clue about it. I've spoken to so many health professionals in this country, and there's other than the people that screen me, no one's even heard of it before. And because it's sexually transmittable, but you can't technically test for it unless you know about it because the NHS don't offer a test for it, it's very likely a lot of people will have it. So yeah, it is one of the things that more research needs to go into, and a lot of the research is quite new with it. They are more up to date with things in like America or Australia with it, as far as I'm aware. But there's loads of great Facebook groups. I think I've read like every single story and every single comment on every Facebook group that exists, and read every study that exists. But yeah, it's definitely something to read into yourself if you are struggling to conceive, or just do the test for before you start trying, just to rule out any sort of infection that could have a problem.